Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Mark Lamont Hill, and I am joined by
Buck Sexton.
And you are listening to What Do You Really Think? And this is going to be definitely my favorite episode. And I'm going to tell you why it's going to be my favorite episode. For two reasons. One, because we have a guest coming on who is one of my favorite people in the whole world. But also, Buck, because the last two guests we had, who were great guests. We had Spencer Hawes, the retired conservative NBA player, journeyman.
He's like McCain. He's like a McCain level conservative. Let's not get too crazy though, right? He's like a very moderate fellow. You know, he's kind of a Romney style conservative. But go ahead.
For the NBA, that's like Pat Robertson, though. You know what I mean. and then we also have Candace Owens come through.
She is not a Romney conservative. So.
She is not. So I'm just trying to balance things out just a little bit here by having the great Van Lathan on the show.
Right. A bona fide communist now comes to the show.
There we go.
Can I ask, just so I know exactly what I'm dealing with here beforehand, Van, are you to the left of MLH? I mean, you guys have to like duke this out a little bit?
I don't think it's possible to be to the left.
I didn't think so either, but I was just wanting to check because then it's like I really got to realize what I'm in for here. But anyway,
you're going to be good. And for those that don't know Van, although you all should, he is a TMZ alum. He is the host of a great podcast called Higher Learning with Rachel Lindsay. He also hosts another dope podcast, Way Down in the Hole, which of course is for all the Wire nerds, and anybody who listens to this show knows we both love the Wire and talk about it all the time. So he's great journalist, great cultural critic, brilliant insights on sports, politics, entertainment, and all this other stuff. So I actually couldn't think of anybody, Buck, better to have on the show than him for this week because there's so much stuff I want to talk about. Van, it's good to see you, man.
Good to see you too, brother. Always good. And Buck, it's good to meet you.
Great to meet you, Van. Thank you for joining us.
So can we start with something? One of the things, and this, Van, I'm also going to be introducing you to Buck, right? And some of his worldview as we talk about some of the things going on in the world. That's good stuff. So he and I have a slightly different take on how the world is responding to COVID. We both think COVID is real. He's not a COVID denier. He just thinks some of the mask stuff is a little bit performative and not necessarily helpful for moving the public health thing forward. But what was fascinating to me recently is that the NBA announced that they are going to have the AllStar Game. The NBA All-Star Game, they said, and initially there wasn't going to be an All-Star Game in this shortened season, but they decided there's going to be an All-Star Game. And so you're going to have to take everybody in the NBA and put them in one city, in one stadium, on one day. All the events are going to be in the same time, the skills competition, the actual game, the slam dunk, all in one day. And what better place to have this super spreader event than the city of Atlanta? Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the worst places for COVID right now, one of the least regulated places, and they're going to put it all there. And I got to ask myself, like, can't we as a culture, as a country, just be cool for like 6 months, be cool for a year, just don't have an all-star game. Just let it ride. We all get better. And next year we can do whatever we want. But it's like we are obsessed with being free in this weird way that actually isn't about freedom at all. That's just my 2 cents.
Well, to me, the way I look at it I look at it in a very binary sort of dumbed down way. And it's this: people are going to die because the NBA is going to have an all-star game. That's almost assured that people that wouldn't have died are going to die. Now, this is my thing. The NBA can think of a structure where its players, its coaches, and its personnel goes to the all-star game and everybody is tested and everybody is safe and everybody is incubated. What they cannot plan for, though, is everyone from Albuquerque, from LA, from Vegas, from all these places that travel into the to Atlanta because they hear All-Star Game and they think the world's biggest party weekend. For people who don't know, specifically in my community, the All-Star Game is like a 2-day Disneyland trip. We do it crazy. We do it big. And of course, it's big for commerce. It's big for the economy. I think the league, forget about the league's responsibility to its players. I feel like the league failed here in being responsible to its fans. Now, I know everyone's going to make it their own decisions, and that's true. That's America. But at the same time, I do think to a league that wants fan engagement, a league that wants to be responsible, wants to set an example, and they've taken so many other stances, could have taken one here and show people just how serious this is, and they miss an opportunity.
So I don't really watch the NBA, so I don't have a lot to add into this. But I would ask, Mark, to go back to your point about freedom. The most interesting, so it seems like for you, the biggest one-off COVID story from this week is this NBA game. For me, it is what has become very obvious about the teachers' unions. But so, by the way, I wouldn't disagree that maybe the NBA shouldn't have the All-Star Game this year. By the way, I'm as Mark said, I'm not a let it ride free for all guy. I'm not my dad just got vaccinated last week, and I helped him in that process of trying to, because he's a senior and he's at substantial risk. But with the teachers unions, for example, I kind of want to hear from both of you guys. The mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, is basically appearing on TV now crying, being like, kids are suffering terribly. The data shows that not only are children at effectively zero risk from COVID, children, we're talking about K through 8, right? Just to be very clear, we're not talking college kids, we're not K through 8. They're at effectively zero risk from COVID. They actually, and they don't even really know why. I think it's because they believe, and I think even Fauci, Mark, would say this, that the virus is cleared very quickly from young kids so that it's unlikely that they're going to pass it to anyone else. There's very few cases of child to adult transmission. There's adult to child transmission that occurs easily. And even Fauci has said we got to open the schools. Teachers unions in Chicago, among other places, are saying no, maybe not until the fall, and maybe not even until midway through next year.
I stand with them.
Oh, come on.
I do. I'll tell you why.
I'm
going to use the Van Lathan metric from now on, which is, will more people die from doing this than not doing this? Now, of course, people are going to die regardless. So people die from car accidents.
People are going to Home Depot by the thousands and thousands all across the country, Mark.
But some things are foreseeable and some things are not. Some things are preventable. Some things are not. So for me, the question is, a bunch of first graders probably won't get COVID, right? But I think about that first grade teacher that comes in and does have COVID. Will they pass it to the first grader? No, but they may pass it to the second grade teacher or to the principal or to the janitor or to the cafeteria staff, who, again, are low-wage workers, don't have as great access to health care, all those things. Can
I jump in there? And you and I, we've gone back and forth on this before, but I think one part to add into this is that, like I said, children are at effectively zero risk. That's actually true. The flu.
The adults who work.
No. I know, but I was going to work through. But so then the adults getting it from children is also so. Are teachers, if there's 10 kids in a classroom who are socially distanced, are they at a substantial risk of getting it from those kids versus elsewhere in their life? The answer, from what we know, based on all the data we've seen, is not really. And then beyond that, though, Mark, I have to ask. So why? There's I go to a grocery, a neighbor grocery store here in New York, and I know all the clerks, and I know the manager. You know everybody, right? They've been showing up, doing their job every day since the beginning, the worst days of the pandemic. The people who work at my CVS, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know them as well, but I know them by sight. They've been showing up every day. So then, if teachers are essential, isn't it essential that when even the CDC has said it's safe enough for them to do their jobs, they should go in and do their jobs?
I see what you guys did to me here. This was very nimbly done by you guys, because I'm actually in the middle here. I'm actually in the middle here. This is what COVID has sort of drilled into my brain. I stand with science, is what I stand with. Okay, so in the case of Atlanta, it's scientific. It's a scientific inevitability that people are going to get sick from going down there. That's the way that works. There are other things though that are harder. Here in Los Angeles, for a long time, we had a ban on outdoor dining, right? They refused to make the case scientifically about why that was something that had to happen, right? This recent ban that we had, they refused to make the case. They couldn't make the case. it seemed like something that they were doing more to save face because it had been handled so poorly out here. So after seeing what was happening to people out here and how you could actually make the argument that the numbers were being negatively affected by people getting together because people were doing that, I was thinking to myself, you know what? They probably should just go ahead and do it. In this particular situation, I spoke to a guy, shout out to Big U. Spoke to Big U out here, community organizer out here in LA. Great man. And he called me about 6 or 7 days ago. He's like, Van, like, we have a real problem. I'm like, what's the problem? He goes, well, these kids, we're losing all these kids. We're losing them. Like, well, we can't make them go to the Zooms. We can't make them learn. Like help me. And we're coming up with something where we're going to have rappers teach Zoom classes or be teachers' aides or all kinds of stuff like that. Something to get them to lock in. But just from an educational standpoint, like, they're essentially failing these grades. And just the entire structure of it is gone. And then these kids are outside. They don't have anything going. And this is from Central and South Los Angeles to where it's kind of going down right now out there. So for me, if science can prove that opening schools is safe, then I think that we should. If science can prove that. Now, that's coming from Van Lathan, who is not a teacher, who does not have to stand in the harm's way of COVID in a classroom. And so it's an easy thing for me to say. But it seems to me we have to kind of be honest with ourselves on a lot of things here. If science says that wearing a mask prevents it, if science says all of these things, we have to listen to science across the board and not just kind of when it suits a narrative. And so if science says it's safe, then I don't have any problem with it. But once again, I'm not a teacher. These are data-driven decisions, and these are also human decisions.
But like you get your I mean, I don't know where you get your groceries, Mark, but I'm sure Van, you've probably seen people showing up there. I mean, they're doing their jobs, right? I mean, those are people that are working for not a lot of pay, certainly not a lot of glory. But, we had in the beginning, remember, we had all this sort of clap in for essential workers, for first responders, obviously nurses and doctors. But first responder, and in New York City, I don't know if you guys had this in Philly, Mark, or Van, you're out in L.A., right?
Los Angeles, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys had this, but every day at, I think it was 7 o'clock, every day we had this clapping, and it was to thank the people that are like operating the pharmacy so you can still get your heart medicine, right? It was like to thank the people who are still going. So it just feels kind of like, there's risk, right? I mean, I appreciate that you're saying you're not a teacher. I'm not a teacher, obviously. Mark actually is a teacher, so that's a different.
And I'm teaching right in this damn room.
Right.
I'm not going back to campus.
So Mark can speak from the I perspective as a teacher here, but I mean, other people have been showing up and doing it, and it feels like, look. If you want to make accommodations for teachers, and Mark and I have talked about this, who are at high risk, by all means. But beyond that, I mean, if you're 25 years old and you just want to do Zoom sessions and you don't want to be a part of the growth that's necessary for these kids, like there is the whole get another job thing that people actually at some point have to deal with because, yes.
Can I ask you a question? Can we split the difference here? Is there a way to have the kids come to school and have the teacher teach from Zoom? I like that.
You need somebody there for safety and discipline purposes. You know what I mean?
But minimal numbers, right? Instead of it being 100 teachers in the building, it might be 10 people in the building.
Like 10 teachers in the building.
So here's the thing: a blended approach that has the kids there with some adults willing to be there. I actually like to your point about trying to find the middle. I actually think that's fine. What you're seeing. And look, I know this is a sensitive thing for Democrats because Democrats need money from those teachers unions to win elections, and there's a lot at stake. And I mean, you guys I got to poke you guys a little bit on this. Generally speaking, Democrats.
I'm not a Democrat, by the way.
Oh no, I'm not talking about you. I just mean Democrats in general. I mean, Mark there's not technically a party that I think.
Green Party. I am Green Party. I have been Green Party officially for 20 years, but they're drifting to the center too much for me. So
the Green Party is too wimpy for Mark's views. But see, like there are views that I think are fair-minded about this, and that take the balance into effect. And I mean, Van, it sounds like you're willing to say, okay, what does the science tell us? Fauci and others have said, guys, it's safe. We really got to open the schools. Teachers unions are saying, make me. And the truth is that the Democrat Party can't really make them in these major cities. And I would just add one more thing, and then I do think, you know, this is a fascinating topic, but Mark, we should probably get into a couple other things too. But just one other thing, private schools, parochial Catholic schools, they're open pretty much everywhere. So what's really happening here is you have a lot of kids, primarily minority kids in a lot of cities who are stuck. Now, you know, I went to a Catholic school here in New York. Obviously, you know, there's a lot of diversity within the Catholic and even in the private school system, depending where you are. But it's a lot of minority kids who are being left behind with the Zoom class. Everybody I know who does it, by the way, says it's nonsense. While some of their peers who are more well off, are getting to go to actual school. And it's just these are critical years, man. They've lost a year of school, so I just think there's a high cost here.
Look, I agree. I mean, I would value health over education. I think I'd rather people be in Zoom getting a shitty education than dying in classrooms. The question is just always, you know, how many people are going to die? Whenever you open this economy back up, whenever you open this country back up, somebody's going to die, right? And it's just a question of how many and what's preventable. And again, if the science continues to say, to Van's point, the science continues to say, look, we can do this effectively without a lot of risk, I'm okay with it. I just feel like whenever we say there's minimal risk, that minimal group are the most vulnerable people in society. It's usually the people who are the poorest, the oldest, the less protected, the least healthcare, et cetera. And so for me, it's about making sure that they're okay. And if they're okay, and if we can figure out a way for them to be okay, then I'll definitely be okay. But I did want to bring up another thing, and this is another thing that made my week. And by the way, Van, just to give you some context, Buck and I bet on who would win the election.
He has taken all of my money. I am running up credit card debt to buy his sushi in the future. It's been a mess, man.
Yeah, I feel really good about all the bets that I've won, from the Georgia Senate races to the presidential race. But now I don't just want to win.
Man, QAnon's letting you down, bro.
The Q message boards were so spot on until just a few days ago.
So for me, I don't just want to win. Like, you know, there's an old way in sports. Like when I was in high school, if you were up by 30, and my team was up by 30 a lot, we would, you'd call the dogs off, right? You don't steal second base in baseball when you're up. Donald Trump has lost. Republicans have lost, and I want to run the score up. I want to shoot threes. I want to throw buckets of confetti on them. I want to win so dramatically and shame them so much that they will never, ever attempt to put a Donald Trump up again, right? This is specifically about Donald Trump. So this week I saw that Donald Trump has been banned from ever rejoining SAG after, right? You know, he was a member of this, speaking of unions, right? And they have said, you know, not only are you out, but they're basically going to, for all intents and purposes,
erase him like Soviet style.
Yeah, I see what you did there. I was going to say impeach him, but for me, I guess the question is this spiking the football excessive? From, you know, there are people say, look, he's out of office. What's the point of continuing with impeachment? That wasn't the spirit of the law. But also, what's the point? It's just going to piss off his loyal base. What's the point of banning him from SAG?
Yeah, why be unconstitutional as well and continue this whole nonsense?
I don't concede that it's unconstitutional.
I know it actually. I will be fair. It's actually a gray area. But go ahead, Mark.
It's super gray and probably leaning toward my side. But I guess my question is, as a culture, do we need to move away from Donald Trump and pretend he didn't exist like we did on Twitter? Or is it okay to keep shooting threes, you know, when you're up by 30 in the fourth quarter on them? I'm curious to know. I'm finding great joy in this. Now, I'm not mature enough, to be clear. I'm not mature enough to know whether or not this is the right thing to do or whether I'm just enjoying it so much that I don't give a shit anymore.
So I'm assuming you guys both saw The Dark Knight, right? Or actually not The Dark Knight, but Batman Begins.
Oh, of course. Well, actually, I think that's actually the best of the trilogy, by the way, but go ahead.
You think Batman, me and you can get at each other later, but Batman Begins. So there's a scene in Batman Begins that kind of is that sort of explains the way I really feel about this. Like, Bruce Wayne's in the car, and Rachel, then played by Katie Holmes. They switched it and went to Maggie Gyllenhaal, which is very interesting.
Both bad choices, by the way.
I love listening to you nerd out on these movies that I've never seen before.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what happened. So Bruce Wayne's parents, I'm sure you know this, that Bruce Wayne's parents were killed and he decided to freak out and become Batman. So Bruce has a gun, right? And he's about to run in and kill the guy who killed his parents. He's in the courtroom. And Rachel sees him with the gun. She slaps him. She says, and she explains to him, she says, what you're doing is terrible. She says, justice is about harmony. Revenge is about making yourself feel better. And that's such a simple movie shtick line. But when we think about things, I want us to think about this. Think about, it's a very, and it makes you ask not just hard questions to the other side, it makes you ask hard questions to yourself, which is the more important conversation. When you think about something, think about what's being done for harmony's sake. Forget about making yourself feel better. And this is across the board. This is the left, this is the right, this is everyone. What's for the sake of harmony? Now, there can be no harmony without accountability. Because if you don't have any accountability, the people under that umbrella, right, that see, hey, he did it and he didn't get away with it, so I don't have to give a fuck about, I don't have to care about anyone, right? Oh, okay, I don't have to give a fuck about anyone, right? It's cool. All right, whatever. So you need that to establish societal rules and societal norms, because what society really is a bunch of little treaties that we've all signed with each other that we're agreeing not to break for the greater good of everyone. So that's a difficult question to ask about President Trump, because a lot of this is emotional. A lot of this is the internalized fear that we felt, that we don't think that specifically white America ever believed us when we would articulate it to them. And then when it manifested itself into this political demon, we go, oh, okay. So now, not only do we have to kill the demon, we have to do him like they did William Wallace and put his head on the London Bridge, right? You know what I mean?
Drawn and quartered, yes.
Draw and quarter him in front of everyone to let everybody know this.
Van and I, by the way, Van and I have a lot of nerding out to do, Mark. We might have to go do a whole separate show.
I'm smart enough to keep up my context, but I don't get any of these references.
All right. You have to kind of put it out there. So I would just say, look, if shooting a 3-pointer is good for society, then shoot it. Really, if shooting the 3-pointer, but all of these are cases to make. If it's good for everyone, then do it. If it's good for you, if it's just good for you, then don't. Because we got to get better. You know what I mean? And that's questions that you ask yourself. And the harder thing is, it's a dual conversation. It's the conversation of how far to go, and then on the other side, it's the question of, America is in peril. What are you guys prepared to do over on your side? I'm done.
That's powerful. I guess, but let me ask you a question based on what he just said. Could you see how we could produce harmony, that it could be the best for everybody, if we make an example out of it? Similarly, sure. And you Buck's going to hate my example.
Yes.
But when we killed Saddam Hussein, right? You could make the argument we could have locked him up forever, which is what, I don't believe in death penalty, but when you kill Osama bin Laden, once you have him captured, what's the point of killing him? Part of it is to make an example, right? Part of it is to prevent further harm. Part of it is to show power. Similarly, and this is without death or incarceration, to spike the football on Donald Trump and to continue to subject a narcissist to varying forms of public humiliation is to prevent him from doing greater harm. Is that not for the greater good? Is that not?
So I'm
okay.
One sec, Van. There's so
sure.
much. I just 1 second. First off, I think it's interesting you bring up Saddam, because I think in this case the more instructive example would be Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, who my old unit was very instrumental in finding. And then a bunch of Tier 1 operators actually ended up taking that guy. Well, actually, I believe it was an airstrike, if I remember now. But they took that guy out, and it got worse. The insurgency got worse afterwards. That's actually what ended up happening. Everyone thought, oh, my God, Abu Musab. Zarqawi, Mark and I have a lot of Iraq background that we talk about sometimes. Zarqawi, as you remember, Mark, was so brutal and vicious to Muslim Iraqis that even the Al-Qaeda, that's why there was the breakoff with AQI, and Al-Qaeda was like, hey, you got to fight the Christian invader, yada, yada, but you blowing up, like having a suicide bomber blow up a whole bunch of people who are just trying to get bread in the morning, like that's not actually something that is helpful to the cause. That was from Al-Qaeda, which is pretty, anyway, they killed this guy. We killed this guy, thank God. It was awesome. Champagne for everybody. And then the insurgency got markedly worse. It actually deteriorated. Now, I bring this up because you're talking about essentially annihilating someone's political brand right now with Donald Trump. And I will tell you that there is, from even a lot of people on the right of good faith, who are not even really Trump supporters, the feeling of using a counterterrorism apparatus against Trump supporters, Tapper and others going on CNN talking about MAGA terrorists all the time and speaking about this as though there's some imminent coup and all the soldiers in D.C., that feels like it's the beginning of, or it's really the early stages of some kind of a purge. So I don't think that's anywhere near healing. I think that the troops in D.C. is theater now. I think it's absurd. I think all the fences up is madness. I think the people that went in and rioted were morons. Mark and I have talked about this. And not only illegal, immoral, and bad, but also entirely counterproductive to whatever they think, back to the Q thing, whatever they think they're achieving. They basically nuked it with stupidity. But then I would also say, and then I want to hand this off because I know I've thrown a lot out, but I would say that if they actually impeaching Trump, I think, look, it's not going to work in terms of they're not going to be able to stop him from running for office again. Now I think the political calculation, and this is a prediction, so who knows if this is correct, but if they were able at the last minute to get a conviction of Donald Trump in the Senate, the first time it would have ever happened in the history of the United States, and he's not allowed to hold higher office afterwards, I think that you effectively create a political martyrdom. Donald Trump Jr. is very popular with the Trump base, and it becomes the impetus for Trump 2024 with literally the next Trump, Donald Trump Jr., with a whole base that's going to feel like Democrats had their moment to beat COVID, to help the economy, and to be sane human beings, and they went around and bayoneted the survivors after they won the battle. That's where.
So the one thing that I'm terrible at, which is why one thing I'm terrible at is future casting. I can't see the future. I know people that say, hey, man, I told like LeBron James is coming to L.A., and then he came to L.A., and I was like, damn, dog, you was right. You know what I mean? So I'm bad at future casting. But I am particularly good at living in what we are in right now, right? So, and kind of being in the moment. So I can't think, I can't really, I don't know all the dynamics that would go into creating another Trump sort of moment, and Ivanka or Don Jr. or whomever. I'm not sure. You may very well be right. What I do know though is there's a way for people to prioritize American values like right now, right? And there's a way for us to redefine American values like right now, or some would say not even redefine, but define right now. So what happened on January 6th, you can't use adjectives to describe the seriousness of that. In my opinion, to me, you can't. It's not something that you can just turn the page on. As far as bayoneting the survivors or anything like that, I mean, you don't want to do that, but somebody's got to get bayoneted. Somebody's got to.
Somebody's got to die.
That actually sounds like a line from The Wire that Omar would say.
Right. So I mean, they stormed, broke into the seat of the Capitol building, man. You're not going to. This is from the right. All this law and order bullshit that's been used to excuse all of these political atrocities that's gone on the last generation and a half. You can't fucking stand on that shit, and then have people run into Nancy Pelosi's office and slap him on the wrist and give him high fucking culinary. The one guy's inside eating gourmet food inside the jail. It's a weird thing.
I feel like at this stage of the conversation is where I'm gonna. we're getting going. The fire is burned up, and I'm about to throw some kerosene on the middle of it because we want to keep our audience engaged, entertained. So I will tell you this: a huge part of this. First off, 80 based on the polling, which say what you will about polling, but I do not know a single person on the right with any platform, stature, or seriousness who does not openly we condemn it to we've been condemning it to the point where it's annoying, right? We've meaning that people have heard, okay, you condemn it, we get it about the riot. That's one just for our conversation. But the thing that I think might get you gentlemen a little bit engaged is that there's a sense that the left excuses riots that are not in any one instance the same optics, the same seriousness as January 6th, to be fair, to be clear. But in the aggregate, far more of them in far more places all across the country in 2020. And that did burn down a police station. That did try to burn down a federal courthouse, which is, again, federal government property and not, that's the judiciary in Portland. And there's not condemnation. There's this mostly peaceful protest line that gets thrown out. And it's sort of, we sit around and we go, very few people remember the peaceful parts. They remember the Molotov cocktail in a cop car in Brooklyn. They remember, officers almost assassinated sitting in their cars in Los Angeles. Van, I forget. They were Los Angeles sheriffs, I believe.
Compton. Yeah.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with anything. Had nothing to do with all of that stuff.
Well, just the belief at the time. I haven't followed up on the story now, but the belief at the time was that was somebody who was acting on behalf of. But if you're saying that's not, then that's fine. That's an important clarification. But obviously, Antifa, BLM, all that stuff. Gentlemen, the Democrat Party is like, hey, look, sometimes you got to burn some shit down, and conservatives look around and say, what do you mean? But
this isn't a particular selective morality or selective outrage from the left. This is what it means to be human, right? We make value judgments about what's worth fighting for, what's not, what's worth resisting and what's not, what's worth killing and what's not. I think everybody would say that these are ideological decisions, right? Like some things deserve to be for example, if I were to set up in front of a nursing home where people were getting life-saving drugs and protest, you'd be like, yeah, Mark's a real asshole, right? Whereas if I stood in front of a place, a liquor store in a neighborhood, right? Some people might be like, let them drink. Some people might be like, oh, well, this is a good moral crusade for Mark, and so forth. And we could find different things where the ideology behind it makes a huge difference. I concede that point, that yes, we are being selective in what we're outraged about, but I don't see that as the kind of gotcha that many people on the right do. I think it's okay to be selective about this. It's not arbitrary though. It's selective, it's subjective, but it's not arbitrary, right? And it's not hypocritical. So for me, the question is it okay to protest? Is it okay to have principled resistance to the state? I say yes, whether you're Democrat, whether you're Republican, whatever. There was nothing principled about what happened at the Capitol. A police officer died. They're not even, these are people who love cops. These people believe in law and order, and they're basically engaged in a coup or an insurrection. This contradicts their own values. I could disagree with their mission and still say they have a right to do this mission, or it's at least consistent with their values. This was a bunch of crazy people who got a battery put in their back by.
But you and I don't agree. Don't disagree at all on any aspect of the severity or the wrongness of the Capitol Hill riot. But right. You and I do seem to disagree on that there's a social justice imperative for, I actually refer to this and many others as the purge night, when in my own neighborhood here in Manhattan, you remember there was that night, I think it was, somebody might have to fact check me, like the first week of June, I believe it was, of last year. And there just were people, breaking into stores, looting Louis Vuitton handbags, destroying businesses in my neighborhood. They broke on my block. They broke into the T-Mobile or Verizon, I forget, but one of those cell phone stores to steal all the cell phones, which they did. There was a little Indian cafe right around the corner from me, owned by a family, tiny place. They just kicked in, shattered the windows, broke the door. No reason other than just, that's social justice? I mean, does anyone write that family a note and say, sorry, we just cost you a few grand during a pandemic when you're, holding on for dear life for your business?
Couple of things here. You know what we're not doing right now? Talking about the Capitol insurrectionists. I think there's a toxic whataboutism that goes on when we deal with ramifications of white criminality. There's something that happens that stops us from talking about who did what and makes us talk about when we did it. And the reality is we can have huge conversations about, well, this country is built because a bunch of rich slave owners decided that they weren't getting represented enough, so they threw a bunch of tea into a harbor and got it popping, right? So there's, to a degree, America is the beginnings of America are about people who felt underrepresented, underseen, and we're willing to die so that you see us, and willing to build something out of that. So there's really nothing new about this on either side. What you can debate, though, and I think to Mark's point, is number one, the appropriateness of it, and number two, as far as the Capitol riots are concerned, the severity of what it was that happened. This was something that came from the top down of the country. This is the President of the United States lying repeatedly to people. By the way, the most vulnerable people of his base, right? The real foot soldiers, and sending them into the seat of U.S. power and having them act like a bunch of fools and killing the cop. Now, this is like, if we want to equate that to the entire world, seeing a black man get choked out by the police after a black woman gets shot in her home, after a black guy gets killed jogging, right? If we want to put all of those things on the same level, then we can have that conversation. But let's do one thing first. Let's deal with what happened in D.C. because it was all on tape. It was a very clear violation of everything that we stand for. So before we get to the whataboutism of what happened, because the left got kicked in their nuts all summer long about that, let's keep the conversation centered on whether or not having Americans trample into the Capitol building and kill cops, whether or not that's important, because that's what we're dealing with now.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I would just say two things. One, and I'll put this out there, and either one of you, I'm curious to hear your take on it, your response to it. One is that do you really feel like there's been insufficient condemnation from? Look, there's like it's not fair to do the thing of there's some random Twitter account somewhere that says that, I mean, people who matter and have power within the movement, whatever that means, on the right and conservatives. Do you think there's really been insufficient condemnation? That's point one. And point two, about the whataboutism issue, I think that ties into the condemnation, because I sit here on the right. I mean, Mark and I did a show right after the Capitol insurrection. I mean, I was horrified and furious, and not in just sort of, I mean, as an American, as a person who believes in the rule of law, as a person who backs the blue, as I say to Mark, I am very pro law enforcement. I worked at the NYPD for a time. But beyond that, I just want to know, I mean, Antifa was last weekend. Last weekend, Antifa was on the march in D.C. screaming, "Burn it all down," and calling for, I don't even know what they think they're calling for. And they, surrounded diners and were yelling at them. This is still going on, right? So I don't think, it's not like I'm reaching back into some left-wing activism of the past from 10 years ago, because, I mean, if we were going to do that, I would say, all right, if we're really going to talk about political violence, there's the Bernie Sanders supporter that shot Steve Scalise and almost murdered Rand Paul and tried to kill about a dozen members of Congress, yelling this is for health care. But that was years ago. That was a one-off, didn't involve the president. I understand there's a lot of distinctions there.
Well, there's also Timothy McVeigh.
Exactly.
We could do that all day long. You know what I mean?
What I'm saying is, this is still happening right now, right? The marches, and I think, by the way, the BLM Antifa thing, somehow they get mixed together, but they're different, and that's a whole other conversation too. Because Antifa is still running around saying we're going to burn down building, and Biden's president. So I've thrown all that out there, Mark. But I guess you could start with do you think there's insufficient condemnation? Really? Do you think that people haven't said that was bad?
I think that that's a good question. I think that there has been a kind of gesturing to the incident and say, yeah, this is bad. It's kind of the default position. No one's going to say this is good. The question is, are there any teeth behind that? Is there any muscle behind that from people in power? People like you have spoken out. A lot of bloggers have spoken out. A lot of radio folk. some TV talking heads. I would say a lot of right-wing TV talking heads are engaged largely in whataboutism, which does seem to equivocate on this, right? So if the Fox News is, and even worse, the Newsmaxes of the world are saying, well, there was a little drama at the Capitol, but it's nothing like what happened all summer. I mean, that was a dominant narrative that came out of right-wing media, but I think for me, it's not. It's about that, but it's also about those members of Congress, specifically the people in the House and Senate who were saying, who refuse to offer any punishment, who don't think that there should be any real muscle behind this, who don't want to hold the president accountable. I know you and I disagree about what rises to the level of insurrection. It's not insurrection of
inciting insurrection.
Incitement, yes. But at the core, I think there are people who. It seems like through their actions, it's like a wink, wink. Like, yeah, that was really bad what you guys did, but don't worry, there's no problem here. But again, and I think equating Antifa with BLM, I think is problematic for lots of reasons. BLM is an organized movement. Antifa is a loose network of
but Antifa does act in BLM's name sometimes, which is always interesting as well. But anyway.
Yeah, and as an organizer and as a former organizer, as an activist, I can tell you, I've been lots of places where everybody from RevCom, the Revolutionary Communist Movement, to Antifa, to all these people show up to a place where we're organizing, and they're the ones who throw the cocktail. They're the ones who push the cop, and then they often leave, and we get our heads kicked in. I mean, that's been happening to me for 30 years. So I can tell you that those sometimes that's not a fair equation. But at the end, my final point on this, on what you just said, is for me, there's still this sense, and Van was getting to this, that we're comparing apples to apples, and we're not. It's like when white people do something and they say, I've worked at BET for a decade. People say, what if there was a white entertainment television, or what if there was a historically white college? And it's like black and white are opposite sides of the same coin. Similarly, those who are out here protesting the state and state violence, which has systematically wielded a certain kind of violence against people, I think is different than the people who showed up at the Capitol. So I agree with you. Yes, I do think that running in the Capitol and trying to steal Nancy Pelosi's podium is different than kicking in a cop car. I do think that tearing down a gate in D.C. is different than tearing up a Target. When the systems, when the Target and the police car are the things that are actually not.
So can I ask you? I mean, you're picking very specific, and I see your line of argument. I hear what you're saying. You're picking very specific things, but what do you say? And I don't know, Van, if you want to take this, or also I just want to give the floor back to Van as our guest here. But I mean, sometimes it's a cop car. By the way, I mean, throwing a Molotov cocktail into a cop, I mean, it's a weapon of, Molotov cocktails are weapons of war. They came up with them in Finland to fight against the Soviet invasion. So, I mean, there's a reason. But what would you say to the small business owner in Baltimore, the small business owner in Minneapolis, or name any number in Kenosha, which I'll be honest, I had never even heard of the city before all this happened. Their stores burned to the ground. There's this, I get very annoyed when I hear this thing on the left of, they're insured. A lot of times small business owners are insufficiently or not insured, actually. Insurance companies will fight. So, I mean, but like Van, isn't there an injustice there? By the way, a lot of those are minority owned businesses. A lot of those are people that are trying to make it and are obeying the law and doing their thing and like trying to live the American dream. And now they're sitting on a smoldering wreck because people were angry about something that in the case of Baltimore, or in the case of some parts of New York or wherever, happened somewhere else in the country. Well, what do we say? What do we say to the folks that suffer because of the activism?
Look, I think that the first thing I would say, if I had to say something, I would say I'm sorry. That's the first thing I would say. And once again, there should be, and I actually tried to get this done. There should as many sort of celebrities and luminaries and all of those people that came out and talked about George Floyd, there should have been some initiative to pour money into some sort of fund to make sure that small businesses that got damaged and all of that stuff that had nothing to do with it could draw out of it. There should have been. There should have been, and there still can be. Once again, there's so many of these things that go along with whether or not we believe we're acting on one another's accord, right? So Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the rest of these guys, they condemned like over and over and over again what they saw. They condemned over and over again. Joe Biden condemned it to his detriment.
Right. Too much. Right.
Too much. Like he condemned it to his detriment. They said it over and over and over again. We condemn violence. We condemn violence. We condemn violence. We condemn violence. I think that in this position, it's difficult to me. It's to give a full-throated condemnation of that. Is because violence begat it, right? It was beget by violence. So like it's the reaction to what Mark said. This right here, it's really, I'm gonna be honest with you, Buck. This is what being black is about. This argument right here is what being black is about. Like in the simplest terms, being black is about you saw a black man killed, you went out, you fucked up, you did all of this stuff, you went too far. White people get mad because their candidate lost and they wage war on the Capitol, and it's the same thing, but it's just not. And I know that's simplistic, and I know I'm de-intellectualizing the conversation. It's just it's not the same thing. Those people, as a matter of fact, you want some real shit? I feel sorry for those people more than anyone. When I was looking at that, and rest in peace to Brian Sicknick, a guy who woke up that morning to go and do his duty and passed away. Those people that got whipped up into that frenzy for the ego of one guy, for the ego of one dude that was able to mobilize all of these other sycophants together, I felt sorry for them. That was horrible. And you know what I mean? And if you're asking me, I know business owners on Melrose that had all of their shit torn up, set on fire, all of that stuff. We had to get paint rollers, go back out there, roll up our sleeves and get this stuff back together. I'm willing to do all of that work. I am. But to me, it's just different. And it's not the same. And to be honest with you, I wish it were. I wish I could feel the same way about it. But I have 40 years of data in my head about my treatment at the hands of police. And I know that people are getting sick of that shit. Now, if you're telling me that the other side is going to rage at losing power, and those things are sort of, you can equate those things, well, that's a different debate. But I think that in a way for the right to really condemn what's been going on or what went on January 6th, it's easy. There just has to be sufficient consequences for it. If there are sufficient consequences for it from the top down, then I don't think anyone has any problem. I don't. And by the way, if you get caught running into a target, if you get caught running into a police station and you get arrested and stuff like that, and they arrest you and all of that stuff, I'm not going to say you didn't break the law. I'm gonna say your reasons for breaking the law were ones that I can empathize with. I might pay to bail you out. You know what I mean?
Can I ask a very specific question, man? I asked this in all honesty. I mean, do you think that there was I think it was the Macy's that was near me, and there was a better example in Chicago. They had a car. It was like an Audi, and I actually spoke to a friend who was on the ground and said that what happened was that people were actually coordinating, so they were driving cars up to some of these stores, smashing the windows. I mean, it was do you think that the people who are doing that, and to be clear and to be fair, I'm not talking about people who are marching and saying no justice, no peace. I'm talking about people who are driving a car up to I keep saying Louis Vuitton because I don't, whatever, Chanel. I mean, a very high-end place. That's those products are extremely resellable and of high value, and they're breaking in there. I mean, do you really think they're doing that because of what happened to George Floyd? I mean, I guess that's the people who are marching. And by the way, the ones who are doing it peacefully, I say God bless and do your thing. This is America. But do you think the ones who are stealing the handbags are doing it for George Floyd? Does it even cross their mind that they're doing it for George Floyd?
Well, before I did that, I want to know your opinion of the individual Capitol rioter. I just want to make sure that I get that, because so the Capitol rioters. Do you feel like they were doing it because they honestly thought an election had been stolen from them?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're asking me if I believe that the people that went to the Capitol really thought the election was stolen?
Right.
Yeah, they did. They really believe that.
Okay. So they really believe
a lie. It's a lie.
A lie.
Yes.
It's just sincerity. So just let's sit in the moment of how diabolical that is. Because we're going to talk about, because we're spending a lot of time talking about what happened this summer, when this conversation was about sort of how we politically negotiate what happened in January, right? So I'm just saying. So just for me, you think they really believe that? Just so I know, what do you think should happen to those people?
I mean, first of all, they're facing, the ones who have been caught so far are facing federal felonies. They're going to spend real time, and I mean, the thing about federal law is when the government decides to really apply it, as anybody who's ever been on the wrong side of a drug case understands, federal law is like a terrifying thing, and that everything is 5 years. They're going to spend some real time in prison. And I don't think anyone, and when I say anyone, I use that term is always used kind of loosely. No one who I respect or know on the right doesn't think that there should be prosecutions of people who broke the law at the Capitol Hill riot. I also
you guys just don't think the president broke the law.
The legal definition of incitement is not something the president would meet with saying peacefully have your voices be heard. No, I mean they could bring a criminal case against him if they want. I mean, he's no longer. I mean, we said the president; he's the ex-president. There's no statute of limitations concern here. They could try to bring a case against him. I don't think anybody. The reason the impeachment process is more precarious for the president is because it is a political mechanism, right? Mm-hmm. Different standards of evidence, different standards of guilt. It's effectively what do those in power politically representing the people think is just. That's a different thing from a beyond a reasonable doubt, we're taking away your freedom, as you gentlemen both well know. So I don't think the president is criminally liable for the Capitol Hill riot, full stop. I mean, otherwise, by all means, someone could try to bring a case and they'll just play a tape of him saying, be peaceful. What I do find very bothersome, and I personally find this very bothersome, is that we were all led to believe, okay, this is within the system. They're going to present evidence. And Mark and I had these conversations. They're bringing lawsuits. You want to bring lawsuits? Have at it. Right? There's nothing wrong or un-American with bringing lawsuits about an election or, any number of other things in the political realm. There was a lie that was told, including to Trump supporters, including to people with access to the White House, like me, that, they're going to present, just wait. They have this, they're just compiling the data. They're going to present it. It's going to be presented in court. And then everyone's going to see what really happened here. And so that brought a lot of us to say, okay, like Biden so far won the election, guys, but we'll see what they present in court. That created this room to maneuver for the crazy to get bigger and bigger. So some people are sitting here saying, all right, Biden won. Let's see what they do in court. And what we found is that there actually wasn't some plan. The crack-in is kind of the shorthand for this. There was no crack-in. And by promising people there was, people like me were sitting here saying, I haven't seen it yet. I mean, we could go back and play the old shows with Mark. Anybody, I haven't seen it yet. Let's see what they've got. And then we found out they lied. That this was actually not a thing that they had. And I spoke to people at the top of, I'll just say DOJ and White House, so it kind of muddles the sources a little bit, where the conversations at the top level that were happening were around some people in the administration saying, this didn't happen. Like, you don't have it. Why are we telling people this? And there were other voices who shut that down. I'm sorry to go on such a long rant there, but I thought that's a necessary point of this.
I want Van to get the last word because I know he's going to answer that question. Then before we go, I got another thing that I think you two are going to actually agree on, and I'm going to be quite angry about.
Oh no! So what I would say is, look, in any riot, I remember in '92, my uncle was talking about when the LA riots come out. I had an uncle, and he was talking about how he thought Rodney King got what he deserved, and then the riots popped off, and he had a brand new skill saw. And you know what I mean? He went and got a skill saw, and I was like, "Where'd you get the saw from?" And he's like, well, this is what blah blah blah. So in any riot, there are going to be people that take advantage of it. I think what I would say, and to be honest with you, I think the question is more complex about, are those people wrong or right? Right? I think in that situation, what I would tell you is, after I'm from Baton Rouge, so after the Alton Sterling thing happens, what really gets kind of whipped up into people, and this probably happened on the other side too, is an overall feeling of they don't feel like they live in an equitable society. They don't feel like they live in any of these things. And so when it's on and they feel like it's time to take it to consumerism or time to take it to law and order or they feel like they have a legitimate stake in that game because that's what they've lived under. That's kind of how their lives have been affected. They feel it to me when Beverly Hills was getting looted and people were running in Versace and stuff like that. There was a part of me that was like, that makes actual sense, because that's the sort of perversion of the American dream that these people have been fed and sold. And now, to me, to have them run in there at this time when they feel like America has wronged them, it's not something that they're consciously doing in their mind, but I can negotiate it. Bottom line, is it wrong? Sure. Sure, it's wrong. Like, absolutely, it's wrong. I mean, Mark says no.
If you talk to Mark about American movies for 5 seconds, you realize that he was secretly like raised by the Castro regime in Havana or something.
But is it? But to me, this is what I'm talking about. Is it wrong? Sure, maybe. Is it the conversation we should be having? No. That's not the conversation we should be having. That's what I would say.
And that's fair. I just want to pivot because we're about to run out of time. But there is a conversation, and Buck just referenced movies and the Castro regime, which couldn't be a better entry point into this last thing I want to talk to you about. Van, you and I typically agree on things, although I'm a Sixers fan. I think we're in first place, but I think we just beat the Brooklyn Nets recently, and the Lakers and some other really good teams. But one thing that I heard on your show, Higher Learning, which is a wonderful podcast that everybody should check out, is these I can only call it bizarre claims that you're making about The Godfather 2, which stands as not only the greatest movie ever made, but quite obviously and axiomatically the greatest sequel ever made. Because it's not only the greatest sequel ever produced, it's the greatest movie that's ever graced an American screen. And you seem to have some misgivings about that, and have even ranked other movies above it. And I mean, Terminator 2?
Yeah.
It's hard to be right, Van. In a world of crazy wrong, it's hard to be right. That's all I can tell you.
You two are nuts. Van, can you explain your position so that our listener, by the way, feel free, to write on anything we've talked about today. The email address, of course, is ireallythink@quakemedia.com. Some of y'all are watching on YouTube for the first time. Check out the show. You can sign up for the show, quakemedia.com/Mark, quakemedia.com/Buck.
And we will address your questions in the next episode.
We'll address all this stuff, including, and you can write and tell us what you think the greatest movie ever made is, and certainly the greatest sequel ever made is. But Van, I don't know what to think. I'm nonplussed.
Nonplussed. Wow, such intellectuals I get to share this. Okay, so greatest movie ever made is a different conversation. That just judges the movie on its own merit, the singular piece of art, right? Greatest sequel is actually a different question. Greatest sequel, to me, enters the movie into the comparing the film to the first film. So greatest sequel means the greatest movie coming behind another movie, right? So this is why Terminator 2 is a better sequel than The Godfather 2. Not an overall better movie, but a better sequel. How much better is The Godfather 2 than The Godfather?
Significantly.
It's the same movie. No way.
No, it's not.
Just forever there. I can't even. I was going to try to add to what Van's analysis is here. I just co-sign. I see this exactly the same way.
I don't accept that metric. Here's what I'll say. I think they're both A+ movies. It's like saying how much better is Michael Jordan than LeBron James. You know what I mean? It's like there is a difference. Considerably, right? But that's not a knock on LeBron James, right? It's just that, and so similarly, I think The Godfather is the second greatest movie ever made. Okay. So I mean that's my thing. But to me, the metric of whether something's a great sequel can't just be how is it better than the first, because by that logic, State Property 2 could be the greatest movie ever.
It elevates the promise of the first movie. Terminator 1 is a great concept executed in decent Terminator 1, is some of the stuff, and Terminator 2 takes the promise of the first movie and the whole concept and elevates it to new heights, which is
it makes the first movie better. You almost don't need Godfather 1 for Godfather 2. Like it's good to have it.
I think it's the same. I think it's the same movie. Like if you watch them in linear fashion, you just feel like you're watching one really long movie, which to me,
well, yeah, you're right. You almost don't really need it. Terminator 2 redefined. Really, Terminator 2 really is the beginning of the entire Terminator saga. It redefined so much of the first film and took it to a new place. If you're talking about the greatest sequel of all time, sequel in relation to the first film, right? That's what a sequel is. Then Terminator 2 is the one that redefines and then defines the entire Terminator saga, franchise, whatever. So it is the best sequel. Most sequels can't do that.
Unfortunately, it did go off a cliff with like Terminator Salvation, Terminator Retribution,
now,
Terminator Lawnmower. I mean,
but do you know why? The reason why it did was because, to the point that you made about The Godfather, is after Terminator 2, rather than take the series even further, they started remaking that movie over and over and over again. They started remaking the unbeatable, unstoppable, technologically superior, which is kind of not what Terminator 1 is. Terminator 1 is more of a neo-noir, like a techno horror film, and the second one is the one where all of this stuff gets like interweaved and stuff. After the second movie becomes the standard, which lets you know it's the greatest sequel because it became the standard bearer for the entire franchise.
2-on-1 here, Mark.
Okay,
you're on your own, buddy.
So here's why I disagree. One, I think you're penalizing Godfather 2 for having a better predecessor, which seems unfair, right? It's to use another basketball analogy. It's like when they say Michael Jordan's undefeated in the finals and LeBron James has lost in the finals. It's because LeBron James has taken teams further than they should have. He's being penalized for winning more, right? And similarly, The Godfather 2 is being penalized for having a better predecessor. So for me, the measure isn't what's the gap between 1 and 2. It's if we could look at 2 and assess it as a piece of art, whatever the sequel is, where does it stand? Right? For me, that's one way of measuring a sequel. That's not to say it shouldn't be in conversation with the first. I concede that point, right? Mm-hmm. It should raise the level. It should be in conversation with the first. It should be something different. I agree with that point. I just don't think that should be the primary definer. The primary definer should be how good is this movie? And I don't think anyone, including you two, would say that Terminator 2 is a better movie than Godfather 2.
It depends. It's not a better. It's not a bit like if you're talking to me, if I'm judging this with my AFI, the 100 greatest movies of the last 100 years. If I'm judging it with that lens, then no, it's not. But right. if I'm talking about like all-time theater moments that I've had where I've been happy to be alive and all of that stuff like that, it's a completely different film. And to be honest with you, there's another movie I can throw up there with this is The Empire Strikes Back as well. Like, is in this conversation in terms of a sequel. What you're doing is you're looking at this with a fine tooth, intellectually. I'm a tenured professor at Temple. Movie snobbery. Oh, let's talk about this over a nice Cabernet.
Yes. Dr. Hill prefers The Godfather, of
right.
course.
You know what he is? You know what he is, Buck? He's a leftist cultural elite. That's what you are. You're the guy.
Yes, I'm going to sip my latte and drive my Volvo and speak French as I read this.
He does, in fact, even own a cafe where I'm sure they make oat milk lattes. So
oat milk and for the oat milk latte crowd, yeah. But when you're talking about the popcorn movie goer, I don't think this argument is what you think that it is. Especially and Terminator 2, greatest action movie ever made. It's in the canon.
Action movie, you have no argument from me. Theater film, I'll even say maybe because then I didn't have I'm too young. We're all too young to have seen Godfather or Godfather 2 in the theater, right? Or to even be alive when Godfather, when it comes out. But I think you all are also grossly underestimating how much Godfather 2 raised the stakes of Godfather 1. It gave us the backstory. It gave us the story of young Vito. It helped us understand how the olive oil company gets created. It helps us. Marlon Marlon Brando doesn't. It's hard to imagine Brando doing violence, but when you see Robert De Niro killing the black hat or the white hat, killing the guy back in the old country, right? Mm-hmm. Now you understand how he became the Don. Now you understand how he earned the respect that he gets matter-of-factly right now. You understand why those sick babies, right? How that becomes the weak and stupid Fredo, right? You get a whole different story. So by the time Vito Andolini becomes Vito Corleone, because he's from Corleone, you see when he returns back there, you see why he would have returned back there. And you understand the connection to the old country. You understand why he has the team he has with him in New York City later on, right? You understand all of it in a different way. And the depth of character and the political analysis. I mean, it's January 1st, 59. You're watching the Cuban Revolution unfold. Godfather 1 doesn't give you any indication that the genius of having him stand on the dance floor, you broke my heart, Fred, you broke my heart, as Fulgencio Batista is being overthrown by Fidel Castro. And Michael, you talk about seeing some shit in the future. Michael Corleone was saying the rebels could win in the car when he was dealing with Hyman Roth. I mean, when the bomb goes up, I mean, it's foreshadowing. It's brilliant. It puts the first one in context. And if you need any indication of how good this is as a sequel, watch Godfather 3.
If you really want to stab your eyes with a pencil, yes.
Then you see the shit. I don't take it for granted.
Yeah, I gotta say, he's kind of sold me, Van, on going back and watching. I've probably seen Godfather Part 2 5 times, so not like 100 like I've seen Terminator 2, but I'll probably go back and give it another whirl now, just based on that sales pitch, Mark. I still agree with Van, but I like your sales pitch.
It's the passion. This is what I'll say. I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. All of that stuff was cool to see. It was cool. It was very cool to see. It was cool to see how all of that stuff came together. Didn't really change very much, right? Not to me. Like when in the first movie, when everyone is sort of deferring to Vito, you assume that there's a reason why. You know what I mean? Like you assume that there's that he's a guy. You know, all of these guys like that. You assume that there's a reason why. It was cool to see it. It was awesome to see it. If I'm being honest, I am partial to Godfather 1. I prefer the story of Michael Corleone. I do. I prefer watching Michael Corleone. I prefer that story. But I think Godfather 2 is a better movie. But I think when I look at the term sequel, it all has to do with its relationship to its predecessor. And so, that's the most important thing. If we're just saying which is the better movie, which is the better sequel, it all has to do with this relationship to its predecessor.
Yeah, but to be clear, we're not saying that Eddie Furlong's performance lines up against
Al Pacino.
No offense to Eddie Furlong, who's probably selling real estate in Reseda or something. I have no idea what he's doing, but yeah.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. I don't think I've convinced you all. But maybe I convinced somebody who's listening, y'all. Let me know. I'm sorry, I really think. That the email is I really think.
So please do send I really think at QuakeMedia.com. And Van, we have to say a big thank you to you, man. You fit right in, like you've been hosting this with us all along, so we really appreciate you coming along and being our tricycle for this week. We got 3 wheels.
Can I say something about this real quick? And I'm about to get a little schmaltzy. Seriously. You guys gotta keep doing this, man. Like I did a podcast with Camille Foster over at the Fifth Column. We went back and forth. Yo, you guys being able to debate these topics and go back and forth in a respectful and collegial manner, right? And setting an example and showing a dynamic to Americans who are being increasingly politically militarized. It's more than important. It's necessary intellectual work. Like I just remember, I'm older. I'm 40, so I'm hearkening back. I remember disagreeing with people on fiscal politics. I remember disagreeing with people on things that were very, very central to who I am, but not constantly have to defend my humanity or think of someone as subhuman or all of this. And we're just at a tipping point in American society to where if we don't roll up our sleeves and do some of this and come to some compromises and sign some of those treaties, then the way of life that we're actually even attempting to forge, we're going to lose it. Like, this shit is getting way too out of hand. So kudos to both of you guys for having the podcast or having a show where you just don't sit in an echo chamber all for an hour and a half and lob grenades out of it. Like, this has got to happen. The same people have got to grab the wheel of the car. It just has to happen. So kudos to you guys.
That's a very high compliment, man. We appreciate that.
That's
what
we're
trying to do. We both, Mark and I both have other ventures and platforms and shows and things we do, but we had a very specific mission, and you actually outlined it like we had scripted that, so we appreciate it, even though I know that just came from the heart. But that's honestly what we try to do, man. So if that's coming across, thank you very much. And please, Van, you got a big audience, so tell some of your people to check us out. I mean, I think
definitely will.
The biggest thing I try to tell people, I'm like, just know, I tell my own audience, know what to expect here. We're going to come and have a conversation, and we're actually going to enjoy talking to each other, and we're going to represent our points of view, but it's not so much of it. You know, Mark and I we're both CNN alumni and I mean, I literally left CNN, as did Mark. I left CNN because I was like, this is just bullshit after a while. I mean, I go on, you know, I'm there to get attacked and talked over. I'm actually trying to give the audience there a perspective. I'm not trying to, you know, make anyone look dumb or feel foolish. I'm trying to tell them what the other side is. And it's like WWF for politics, or WWE. Sorry, I just changed the name now. So we're doing something else here, and we just appreciate you saying that, because that is the mission, and that's what we're trying to do. So,
yeah, keep it up. Keep it up. We sorely need it, and there's a new generation of minds that are gonna look to shows like this, because some of the other shit we're getting is just a bunch of bullshit. So
I'm with you on that. Well, Van, thank you so much. And everyone should go check out Van's podcast.
Man. Higher Learning with Rachel Lindsay on the Ringer.
Higher Learning on the Ringer. Make sure you check it out. Check out everything that Van Lathan is doing. Buck, you got anything going on this week you want us to know about?
Just trying to hold the Republic together, my friend. It's busy work, but someone's got to do it.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm actually starting to this week. I'm the new host of Upfront on Al Jazeera. That's totally on brand, right? So it's a weekly show. I'll be hosting an international news show. It's the flagship show of Al Jazeera. It's called Upfront. You can check it out on Al Jazeera. If you have it on your cable network, you probably don't, but you can catch it on the internet. You can catch it on YouTube, and a couple other cool things coming up.
I have a question. Do you guys do that show live from a cave in Afghanistan? Or is that
the booms you hear outside? Those are real.
All right, and so I shout out to Al Jazeera. I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
It's Pakistan, damn it. And yes. Well played, sir. Well, make sure y'all check it out. And I have a book coming out next week, February 16th. It's called Except for Palestine: The Limits of Progressive Politics, with my buddy Mitchell Plitting. Make sure you check that out. Go order it right now wherever you buy your books. And again, I really think at QuakeMedia.com, if you subscribed or if this is the first time you've seen it, come back. Go to QuakeMedia.com/Mark, QuakeMedia.com/Buck. Make sure you check out the show. We'll see you next week.